welcome back to Cyberspace Investigations. Biomutant just released yesterday, and I think it is important to talk about this game because it is practically an indie game, though held to a much higher standard than most indie games are actually held to. Biomutant was made by a 20-person team, 101 Productions, or 101 Experiment, I think is their development title, and they are headed under THQ Nordic. I don't even know if that's the same THQ that made a bunch of DS games I used to play back in the day, but either way, so this game is getting very, very low scores on Metacritic from reviewers, and I'm very confused as to why. Now, Biomutant was made by 20 people. It was a 20-person team from the start, and that might already bring up some red flags. At least for some people, I guess, because I just find it to think that people were finally being able to make what they wanted, and I always like when they do that. And they clearly did with this game as they continued adding things over the years and delaying it to make sure it would actually be good enough to play. And as comes with time, we see expectations for a game rise exponentially as it's going on, which unfortunately is what happened with Biomutant, as reviewers were coming in expecting a revolutionary open world game, which of course they didn't get. I mean, with all due respect, how much can a 20-person team get done even with a 5 or 4 year development cycle? It's impressive what they've done already, truly impressive, but these reviewers were clearly expecting something incredible on a Sony open world game level that they just were never going to get, and that's where I think the important practice of tempering expectations comes in. Guys, please, temper your expectations when you're going into a game, especially something that can be classified as practically an indie game. I would say it's more of a AA game in this regard, just because it's under a publisher, it's more well-known than most indie games that come out, but still. And honestly, all the things they were saying was basically they expected more depth from a lot of the things that come out of this game. The character creation, the class selection, the weapon selection, and again, to that I have to say, it's amazingly impressive what they've done, but how are you expecting a 20-person development team to do this? You shouldn't be, because all you're gonna get is disappointment if you set your expectations ridiculously high. Now, the devs themselves did kind of put the expectations up there from the start, but I think they were raised a lot by people just assuming that these devs were not going to make just an average game. They were going to make something truly outstanding, which, from what I've played so far, because I did pre-order the game and I have put about 4 hours into it so far, it's not really bad. It's not bad at all. It's a good game, by all means, and for people to be giving it 60 out of 100s and then admitting in the reviews, they were actually admitting in the reviews that they had their expectations set way too high, and those expectations were not met, and they knew they had their expectations set super high for a 20-person team game to be made. Well, if you knew, why didn't you lower them to more reasonable measures, and therefore being able to give the game a better score because you're not drowning in your own unrealistic disappointment the whole time? And this is the problem with game reviewers in general. They never seem to really play the games or watch what they're doing or do much research and understand just the more inner machinations of each game they review. And that's where we come out to things like this, where Biomutant does not deserve 60s. It deserves 70s or even 80s, I would say. But definitely not 60s, because at least on my grading scale, that's an F. That's practically an F or a D. But again, how much can you really trust reviewers? It's this dangerous game to play where sometimes you have to trust the people, because the people generally should know better than the reviewers given by what we've seen in the past. But then you got other people, you got reviewers who are actually right, and then the people who are just clamoring over games, something I would say, like, a lot of, Bethesda games. Sure, Skyrim. I don't think it's actually that good. It never has looked that good to me or compelling to play, but people herald it as the best game of all time. Or how about we go back to some of those Nintendo 64 classics? Ocarina of Time, Mario 64, I've played those games. They're not that good. I doubt the people who are saying they're the best games of all time have actually played them in the last 20 years, because, like, Mario 64 is fine, but Ocarina of Time in its original form is abysmal. The only way it's even possible to play is through the 3DS remake, and that's the issue, is that reviewers don't... They're obviously opinionated, they're people, they've got their own opinions and their own beliefs and stuff, but you have to come and look at a game more objectively at the starting line to set your expectations lower. And, well, I guess that's the issue with what Biomutant has got going on for it, because it certainly does not deserve the almost extremely mild negative feedback it's getting. I wouldn't even say backlash, because I doubt anybody's actually saying they hate this game or it's terrible. They're just saying it's not meeting their expectations and therefore lowering the scores on it. Yeah, I don't know. It's very weird. All this review stuff, all these reviewers just... They're double standards. Again, Ocarina of Time can get perfect scores, but Ghost of Tsushima gets marked down for just being an open world game. Are you gonna mark down Halo Infinite for being an open world game then? Are you gonna mark down Biomutant? Did you? What's your standards? Why do your standards keep changing? And I know this has turned into a rant about reviewers in general, and more specifically, I think IGN. Because IGN is kind of the root of these problems, since they don't have the same people review them. And just for one more example, this right here, Sonic games. You got people review Sonic Adventure 2 on the Dreamcast, give it practically perfect scores, then a couple months later it comes out on the GameCube, have somebody else review it who doesn't like it, and give it a 7 out of 10. Then you have somebody review it on PC a couple years later who likes it even less and gives it a 6 out of 10, and then you have somebody review it on PS3 or Xbox 360 and give it a 4 out of 10, and then now you have people wondering whether or not Sonic Adventure 2 was ever good in the first place, when just a couple years ago that would have been an undoubtable yes. But clearly, that's just how the review landscape of gaming has gone, and I don't think I see that changing anytime soon with how things are going, and people just kind of, they click on things and they watch reviews to try and get good enough opinions, and I say good enough opinions because I don't think IGN really offers much nuance in terms of what they're saying, but then again, do I? I don't know. That's really up to the viewer or reader to decide, and clearly the reviewers and the readers of IGN give it enough ad revenue or clicks to keep it going and not change what they do or change the people reviewing because they're giving bad takes. Except, of course, that one guy who just plagiarized a small YouTuber's Dead Cells review. That's unforgivable, but either way, I guess that's all I've got for this one, so see you guys next week for another great program.